Buenos dias, Will Vlog viewers. It is we're nearing the end of our trip. The last 3 days of our time in Peru, we are going to spend it here in Arequipa. It is surrounded by 3 large volcanoes, one that's still active, which is it's called Misty. Our plan today is to check out the cathedral or the Monastery of Catalina, and then we're also going to take a free walking tour. So that's it. Come spend the last few days with us in Arequipa.
So I misspoke earlier and pronounced the name of this monastery incorrectly. It is actually the Monastery of Santa Catalina. The name comes from the Saint Catalina and is actually the founder's favorite saint. The monastery itself is rather large. It used to house over 300 people. Not all of them nuns. Actually, only about 1/3 were nuns, and the other 2/3 were the servants to the nuns. This was not a normal monastery. This was actually a monastery for the posh, so it cost actually a fair amount of money. They said the equivalent to like $60,000 US today for somebody's daughter to go to this monastery. What you're seeing now is something that I thought was quite impressive. You can see there's water running down this little trough here, and Greg's going to go ahead and put his hand in this trough, and then water is going to come out of this pipe. This is actually where the nuns used to do their wash for their clothes. I thought it was very impressive that they had something that seems pretty technologically advanced for the time that this monastery was built. I mentioned earlier that Arequipa is surrounded by 3 volcanoes, and there's one that's still active, which is the volcano you just saw, the one in the middle, Mount Misty. The other 2 volcanoes are Chochani and Picchu Picchu, which sounds very familiar to Machu Picchu. Arequipa is a very popular spot for people to start their trek into the Colca Canyon. The Colca Canyon is about 2.5–3 hours away. We unfortunately just didn't have enough time to get out there. That was sort of our original plan. We got to Arequipa, but we spent more time in Lima, Cusco, and then obviously the trek to Machu Picchu. But Arequipa itself is very beautiful. In the year 2000, it was declared a World Heritage Site by UNESCO, at least the Historic Center, which is basically all of the buildings that we've been showing you. One of the most interesting things in Arequipa, we unfortunately can't show you because they didn't allow video or photographs inside of this museum, but it was the museum of the Inca Ice Maiden, Juanita. Juanita is a well-preserved frozen body of an Incan girl who was around 11 to 15 years old when she died, and she was a sacrifice to the Inca gods. They think around 1450. She was discovered at Mount Ampato, so near Arequipa, and it's part of the Andes mountain range. But she was discovered in 1995 by an American anthropologist who was hiking around one of the volcanoes. They actually discovered a couple other bodies while they were doing this, but Juanita was the most well preserved. As you can imagine, this caused a ton of sensation in the scientific world, and mainly because her body was so well preserved. But for a few months out of the year, they put Juanita on display inside of this glass freezer. It is somewhat chilling being in there, but the best part of the tour is actually listening to the guide and seeing some of the artifacts that they found up around where the sacrifices were performed at, and just hearing the history of why the Incans made these sacrifices is well worth the time spent at this museum. But that, my friends, is going to wrap up Arequipa and in turn wrap up our trip through Peru. I want to thank you all for watching. I hope you've enjoyed these videos, and we'll see you next time.
I've been thinking about that one time. Woke me up, it was already lunchtime. Yeah, and you know we eating good, right? Before that, grab my MacBook Pro, rep that Suge Knight. That how do you want it?